Story 1. When people are in front of me and walking slower than I am, it becomes awkward to overtake them. Story 2. How loud some people truly are. I grew up in a neighborhood where everything was extremely loud. People, their cars, their music, everything. I prefer silence, and although I live alone, I generally listen to my music with headphones or earbuds. Story 3. Trash and debris are scattered all over the yard. I have seen a lot of it in rural areas. I grew up on a farm, but my dad is very particular about his property. I don't understand how someone can let their land end up like that. Story 4. When people care too much about celebrities, I know it's none of my business, but who cares about who Justin Bieber is dating? Story 5. People who play TikTok videos at full volume in public. I know it's petty, and I know I shouldn't care, but my ears are not your personal theater. Story 6. Jumping from one partner to another. I do not understand what goes through their minds or what happens behind the scenes, but it makes me think less of them. Story 7. Having children when they are neither financially nor mentally stable can be challenging. A friend of mine was 4 months late on her rent and was trying for a second child. Story 8. People are driving without signaling when turning or switching lanes. The knob on the left of your steering wheel is not just for hanging air fresheners. Story 9. Refusing to cook anything is not cute or quirky. It makes individuals reliant on others and is not the best situation for someone who cannot cook. Additionally, dining out, relying on fast food, and ordering takeout can be costly and are not the healthiest ways to live. Story 10. High confidence combined with a lack of knowledge can lead to sharing what may be considered terrible advice. Assuming that age automatically bestows wisdom is misguided. Story 11. People who talk on speakerphone in public and those who mistreat their children or are rude to customer service workers deserve to wear a shirt of shame for their behavior. Story 12. Right now, I see people treating Easter like it's Christmas. Why are you buying your child a bike and a lot of toys for Easter? I suppose, in reality, it's overconsumption that I'm judging people for. Story 13. Always being in a relationship makes me aware that I sometimes judge those who have never been without one. Story 14. Their outfits, of course, we all have different tastes. But sometimes, I pass by people and think, did you get dressed in the dark? Story 15. Parking in front of my house when I don't know you. I understand that it's public property, but it also feels like it's mine. Story 16. Many children from various parents are not being cared for to a sufficient standard. They cannot support them without government assistance and continue to have more children. Story 17. I understand that the intersection of religion and a lack of critical thinking can be challenging. Generally, I respect individuals' beliefs as long as they do not harm others. However, I have recently felt that the influence of other people's beliefs on my own has become excessive, and I am exhausted by it. Too often, people make decisions based on their religious convictions, which can have negative consequences for others. While there are many kind and intelligent individuals within religious communities, there still seems to be a shortage of them. Story 18. I feel slightly guilty for judging parents in public, but when I see their toddler having a tantrum in the shop because they want sweets or toys, or they're getting agitated, and the parent gives in immediately after pushing back or telling them no, I wonder why. I've worked in childcare, but I haven't had any children of my own yet, and I'm aware it's different when it's your own kids. I also don't know these children or parents personally, and I don't know if the child struggles with a disability or mental health issue. I judge parents for giving in to their child's wants right away. I've seen children as old as 7 or 8 who cannot accept no. It teaches them that if they push hard enough, throw themselves on the floor, cry, and scream loudly, they can switch between parents until one of them caves. Eventually, they will get what they want. I understand that when you're busy, having a rough day, and need to get shopping done, it can be stressful when your child starts screaming or throwing a tantrum. People often look at you or your screaming child. However, if my partner and I were out, I would happily take care of the shopping or take the tantrum outside the store or to the car while my partner managed the other tasks. I know this isn't always manageable, but it's important to teach children how to respond to no, not yet, and how to calm down when they are younger. This helps them understand that shopping is not the right time to act out and encourages them to communicate their needs positively and clearly. Story 19. Oddly enough, people who are overly judgmental seem to signal that their self-esteem is low and they struggle with self-hatred. Story 20. Disney adults. I am usually the type of person who believes in letting everyone enjoy what they love. However, when I discover that someone is a big Disney fan as an adult, I tend to think less of them. Story 21. When someone says, "I seen" instead of "I saw," I automatically think they are highly uneducated. This is probably my own issue. Story 22. Parents who refuse to medicate or seek help for their children suffering from attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, anxiety, and mental health needs are often subject to criticism. While we quickly hold parents accountable when their children suffer from physical ailments due to refusal of medical treatment, we discuss far less the issue of parents who deny emotional and mental health care. Having worked in education for many years at both the high school and college levels, I have witnessed many students held back in life because their parents refused to consider medication or seek help when it was needed. Some seek assistance after leaving their parents' care, but for others, it is challenging to recover after falling so far behind. Consider the difficulty of tackling college mathematics after struggling to focus throughout high school, missing essential content before that. Or facing the challenge of writing a report for your job after barely managing high school writing assignments due to anxiety and being overwhelmed by large projects, with no resources or support to guide you. Some people find a way to overcome these obstacles, but many do not. My message is this. If a school counselor or teacher suggests you talk to a doctor or counselor about your child's mental health or struggles with focus and impulse control, take that advice seriously. Don't let your insecurities hold you back. I understand why parents may hesitate, but I still view this refusal negatively because of the impact on their children. It does not make you a bad parent to have a child who struggles, but keeping your child from getting support to avoid feeling bad about yourself does. Story 23. Having more than 4 children often leads to older siblings taking on parenting responsibilities. This dynamic can create challenges within the family structure. Story 24. How many children they have, especially when it's clear they can't financially support them. Some people may agree with this, but I know I shouldn't judge because I know individuals who struggle financially have less access to sexual education and contraception. They often simply don't know better. I understand this, but at the same time, I judge them for continuing to bring children into difficult situations because it seems like common sense to figure out when ovulation occurs and refrain from sexual activity during that time. However, it's not always that simple. I have to challenge myself not to judge people in these situations. Story 25. A broccoli haircut makes me automatically think the person is unlikable until proven otherwise. I admit this is a baseless and unfair judgment to pass. Story 26. I was in TJ Maxx on a weekday morning with very few shoppers. There was a woman talking loudly, not on speaker, though. I was walking in the general part of the store and tried to move ahead to avoid listening, but she was loud enough to be heard from 6 aisles away. In the end, I approached her and commented on everything she said. I don't know how you hurt your back, but try icing it. I'm sorry you're having trouble with your child's father. Maybe you should take him to court. I think you should go with a light bedspread for the guest room since you painted it a pale pink. The look on her face was one of the best moments of my life. Story 27. Whenever I am around a picky eater, I can feel myself losing respect for them while trying my hardest not to let this irritation take over. The irritation always wins. Story 28. People who give their phones and tablets to their young children are damaging the children's attention spans just to avoid parenting responsibilities. Story 29. I dislike this trait, but I get very annoyed when people do not understand something as quickly as I do. Story 30. People who stand on the left side of an escalator and don't move over to the right hinder others who are in a hurry. Most people in my city know to do this, but occasionally there are those who don't understand or care to stay out of the way. Please move. I'm going to miss the bus. Story 31. People who have several children, each with different fathers or mothers, often make me wonder if they understand what contraception is. Story 32. Constant selfie taking. I have a Facebook friend who has taken more pictures of herself in the past year than I have in my entire life. Story 33. Parenting is not the same for all parents or in all situations. As a parent, I am aware that others sometimes judge me and my choices in public. I generally empathize with struggling parents, but there are times when I find myself judging poor parenting choices. For instance, when parents take their children to a fine dining restaurant where I am spending $300 for a peaceful date with my husband, I struggle to understand. They may allow their children to run around uncontrollably or give them a tablet at maximum volume without headphones. Meanwhile, I am paying a babysitter so I can enjoy a relaxing experience without disturbing others around me. If you cannot afford a babysitter, consider going to a family-friendly restaurant or ensure that your children behave respectfully. Situations like these can be frustrating. Story 34. There is a woman who walks her overweight dog by my house every day, sometimes twice a day. The dog is so heavy that it struggles to walk. I often think that she should stop feeding that dog so much. She's doing it half right. She's so close. I don't understand how she can't see the dog struggling to walk. Interestingly, she has a similar shape to her dog. Story 35. Having too many kids is common these days. I know that having too many can easily mean more than one, or even just one. However, when I see someone managing 5 or more children, with a baby in a car seat while also being pregnant, my immediate thought is, you can take a break from him every once in a while, right? Story 36. I'm good and comfortable and non-judgmental around naked people. You be you. However, I do judge people who look sloppy or poorly dressed. Story 37. People are drinking or using marijuana around their children, even when the children are sleeping. Why can't they hire a babysitter? What if something happens in the middle of the night and they are intoxicated? Story 38. I often judge others but keep those thoughts to myself. I feel most guilty judging very overweight individuals who seem uninterested in improving their situation. I feel guilty because I used to weigh over 300 pounds. Now that I am in shape and go to the gym daily, I find myself judging the person who weighs 300 pounds and has a cart full of junk food at the checkout line. Story 39. People who insist on eating only organic. Does organic even mean anything, or is it merely a classist notion? Story 40. Mispronouncing relatively simple words can occur, even for native English speakers. How does one forget the R sound in library? Story 41. The names of their children can be unpleasant, and I believe it may be challenging for the kids in the future. Story 42. Women who continue having children every time their husbands cheat. You are on your 4th child, and he is still unfaithful? He is not going to stop cheating, my dear. Additionally, couples who have children to save their marriage. I have never seen these situations turn out well. Story 43. Not returning a shopping cart, parking or idling in the fire lanes, and parking in handicap areas due to laziness is frustrating. It is especially concerning when individuals who are not struggling to walk use mobility scooters at large retail stores, despite not being handicapped. There is much more to say about this issue. Story 44. Slow walkers. At this rate, I don't care how old you are. Just move aside. You don't have to speed walk like I do. Story 45. People who use the cry-it-out sleep training method for babies puzzle me. I do not understand why anyone would choose this approach for their child. Feels cruel, and I cannot be convinced otherwise. I do not care if your child is fine now. I still believe it is a harsh method. Story 46. Wearing revealing outfits, especially at a young age, raises concerns. Where are the parents? Do they know their children are out in public dressed like that? It's troubling. Everyone has the right to make their own choices, although I wish these thoughts didn't cross my mind. Story 47. I have an irrational distrust of men with ponytails and their poor life choices, with hairstyle being one of them. Story 48. Or I will judge them. People are smoking cigarettes and walking down the street. I am stuck walking behind them while they blow the smoke back in my face. It drives me crazy. Story 49. Spending excessive amounts of money on branded clothes just for a logo. I spend my money on Warhammer models, so I recognize the irony. Story 50. Funny how nobody dares to say, being overweight. I'll say it. Overweight people. I judge them, but I shouldn't. I'm overweight, and I know this state of life is miserable. Story 51. Leaving grocery carts leaned against someone else's car, and people who can't even smile or acknowledge a small child. Story 52. When someone has severely damaged teeth, but wears expensive clothing, has numerous tattoos, and drives a luxury car. Story 53. Smoking can be unpleasant, especially when it occurs in close proximity to others. It is considerate to step away to a more secluded area. It is not fair to impose the smell of cigarettes on someone else. Please find another location to smoke. Story 54. I work in retail and encounter many challenges. There are people who walk very slowly. There are those who stop to have a conversation in the middle of the aisle. Some require simple tasks to be explained to them multiple times. Others want to discuss their lives while you have work to complete. Story 55. Parking. I understand it is likely due to the previous driver parking poorly. However, I still believe they could have found another place to park properly. Story 56. Did anyone read the question? Bad manners? A trashy and dirty yard? Blasting music in public? Most things listed here warrant judgment, and rightfully so. Story 57. Dirty fingernails. I don't judge if a person appears impoverished or performs a dirty job like a mechanic. I try not to judge because you never really know, but I feel a strong sense of disgust. Story 58. Tattoos and expensive name brand clothes and bags, but relying on government assistance for food and housing. No, pay your bills first, then save for the enjoyable things. Story 59. Being bystanders. Going along with things they know are not right because they are afraid of confrontation or do not want to disrupt the status quo. I judge people for not having the decency to clearly express in plain language when something is bothering them. Story 60. When people's grandchildren have been taken by the state, it raises concerns about the parenting that led to such dysfunction. If someone raised a child who became an abuser, it reflects on their ability to nurture and guide effectively. Story 61. I know it is wrong to judge people's appearance, and I truly believe people should do what makes them feel good. However, I find it difficult to manage my negative thoughts when I see people with overly filled lips. Story 62. People who buy expensive brands or items they don't really use more than once, such as Gucci, Rolex, Apple products, or fast fashion. Story 63. Women over 40 with excessive cleavage on display often struggle to pull it off without appearing inappropriate, in my opinion. Story 64. Not being able to spell correctly or stores that have incorrect spelling on purpose, like car wash, is concerning. Some parents choose unusual names for their children, such as silence, rage, chaos, and envy. Story 65. Having even just one child, you clearly can't afford daycare, diapers, clothes, or any other basics. Story 66. People are into astrology. I'm sorry, the stars are not in the same position they were hundreds or thousands of years ago and do not have any effect on your life or compatibility. I have a group of friends who were excited that my recently born baby is an Aries and believed she would be so headstrong. However, she will be exactly who she is based on how we raise her and her own life experiences, not because of star positions. Forget about retrograde Mercury. Thank you for listening. Story 67. Backing into parking spots, especially when it blocks traffic or involves going the wrong way in a parking lot, can be problematic. Story 68. Being religious. I don't hate religious people or persecute them or go out of my way to be disrespectful about their religion. However, I simply cannot understand how people, especially intelligent individuals, can believe in what effectively amounts to deities and magic. Story 69. People who spill food on their fingers and then lick them instead of wiping and washing are often seen in public. This behavior is particularly concerning in buffet restaurants, as it is an efficient way to spread pathogens. Story 70. Married couples who do not share finances have their own financial philosophies, and it is not my place to judge. However, marriage is about being a team and becoming one. If you cannot share finances because you wish to buy whatever you want without consulting your partner or working together to agree on a budget, or if you cannot stand for your partner to treat themselves occasionally with what is considered your money, that does not reflect the essence of marriage. The good news is that my husband also has similar opinions about this, so we can discuss it in a supportive environment. Story 71. People are trying desperately to have children. Sometimes I think the universe is sending a message, but most are too oblivious to listen. Story 72. Facial modifications, numerous piercings, and tattoos are common forms of self-expression. While I support the freedom of expression, I often wonder how these choices will age over the next 40 years. Story 73. What PMO means is that many of these responses are perfectly valid to judge. Are you all even reading the question? Story 74. I'm in Southern California, and for me, it's the Disneyland-obsessed people who make it their personality. I think it's a bit lame and somewhat sad, but I shouldn't judge because I know it's probably the one thing that brings them joy. Story 75. I should not judge overweight individuals because they can sometimes be that way for reasons beyond their control, but I do. Story 76. People who walk around with loudspeakers attached to their bags and those who play their music loudly at the beach disrupt the peace we seek. What makes them think the rest of the world wants to listen to their unappealing music? It is consistently unappealing. Story 77. The stutter that comes with being a longtime drug abuser is annoying to me, and I feel awful about it. People trying to talk while they are crying bothers me deeply. Story 78. People who refuse to learn often dismiss explanations, even when presented simply in one sentence. Their refusal to engage stems from a preference for ignorance. Rejecting new information is not unusual. Story 79. When adults choose to go barefoot in shopping centers or walk in the city, I find myself immediately judging. Story 80. How their yard looks concerns me. Unfortunately, I often ride by and see a messy yard and think, please clean your yard. I can only imagine what the inside of your house looks like. Story 81. When you ask them about their hobbies and interests, they often struggle to respond with anything other than spending time with friends and family. I cannot help but feel a lack of substance. Story 82. People are feeding their kids junk food multiple times a week, saying, it's only what they eat. They are so picky. Well, yes, because you keep feeding them that and they don't know any other foods. Their teenage years are going to be difficult if you keep feeding them junk. Story 83. People who wait at the register until the cashier tells them the full amount and then start looking for their wallet. The surprising that they didn't expect to pay. Story 84. I observe individuals who consistently choose unsuitable partners. Not in a cruel manner, as this often stems from past trauma, but I do form an opinion. It leads me to believe they may not hold a high regard for themselves. Story 85. Having kids with iPads who use swear words, utilizing food delivery services, and then complaining about being broke. Story 86. I usually judge people based on the first impression I get about them, which is totally wrong. You cannot know someone unless you have a deep connection with them. Story 87. Tourists in my area of the mountains often look like they just visited an outdoor gear store and purchased everything available. They don't live here, so there's no reason they would already own all that equipment, but at least they went through the effort to prepare, which is better than many. We are all tourists at times. I'm sure if I visited their hometown, I would stand out as well. Still, they do look a little out of place. Story 88. When people have super bright LED headlights that make it hard to use my mirrors, I assume they are inconsiderate. I don't care if the car came with those lights. I dislike anyone who has them intensely. Story 89. Obese individuals consuming unhealthy food while driving their mobility scooters. I understand it's not my place to comment, and I remain silent. Story 90. How people spend their money. I work in banking, so I deal daily with people wondering why they are overdrawn or questioning why their debit card is being declined. Story 91. When people support celebrities who have been exposed for doing horrible things, especially if the person has admitted to it, such as James Charles, it raises concerns. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.